Nearly 1,000 people move to Florida every single day, and a massive share of them are aiming at the same 3 counties at the bottom of the state. Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade are absorbing more new residents, more new money, and more new mistakes than almost anywhere else in America. But here is what they are not telling you. The listing price is not the price. There is a second number attached to every home in South Florida, a number that never shows up in the photos, and that number is called the carrying cost. It is what you pay to keep the home after you buy it. Insurance, association fees, special assessments, tolls, time, and taxes. In some towns, that second number is manageable. In others, it is quietly eating people alive right now in 2026. So if I were moving to South Florida this year, there are 10 towns I would skip. Not because they are ugly, but because the cost of owning there has broken away from the value of living there. Some of these are going to surprise you, and number 1 is the most famous address in the entire state. You need to watch this all the way through. Number 10 is Homestead, and Homestead is the trap that catches more first-time South Florida buyers than any other town on this list. On paper, it looks like the answer. It has some of the lowest entry prices in all of Miami-Dade County, newer construction than most of the coast, and room to breathe. Homestead exploded after the rebuild years that followed Hurricane Andrew, when farmland turned into subdivisions and builders sold one simple promise: drive a little farther and you can finally afford Miami. But that promise is exactly the mechanism that breaks it. The jobs did not move to Homestead. They stayed 35 miles north. So the discount you get on the mortgage gets paid back through the windshield every single morning on the turnpike and on United States 1. Residents routinely report commutes of an hour and a quarter each way in season, and the toll and fuel bill alone can run thousands of dollars a year. Do the honest math, and a Homestead commuter can spend more than 500 hours a year inside a car. That is not a discount. That is a second job that pays you nothing. And there is a second layer most buyers never price in. This is the part of the county that took the direct hit from Andrew, and it sits far down the peninsula where evacuation routes clog first, and where storm exposure keeps wind premiums stubborn, even on newer construction. The carrying cost here is not printed on any single bill. It is printed on your odometer and renewed every hurricane season. If I were moving to South Florida in 2026, I would not buy the cheapest house in the region, only to lease my life back to the highway. Number 9 is Hialeah, and Hialeah hurts to say because it is one of the hardest working towns in America. This is a city built by working families, with housing stock that mostly went up in the 50s and 60s, when Miami was a fraction of its current size. Here is the mechanism. Home prices in Hialeah are set by the entire Miami market, but wages in Hialeah are set locally, and that gap has made it one of the least affordable places in the entire country relative to what local jobs actually pay. Buyers stretch to get in, and then the age of the housing stock comes for them. Insurance carriers in Florida have become ruthless about old roofs, old wiring, and old plumbing before they will even quote an older home. Most carriers now demand a 4-point inspection covering the roof, the electrical, the plumbing, and the air conditioning, and a single failing item can kill the policy entirely. A home with a roof past 15 years can get refused outright or quoted at numbers that make grown adults laugh out loud. And a full roof replacement in Miami-Dade now commonly runs well past $20,000. So the affordable house demands a new roof to be insurable, and the insurance demands the roof before you have recovered from the down payment. That is the squeeze, not the town alone, the cost relative to the income the town can actually generate. If I were moving to South Florida this year, I would not buy into the widest gap between price and paycheck in the region. Number 8 is Lauderhill, and Lauderhill is where the cheapest listings in Broward County are hiding the most expensive problems. Scroll any listing site and you will see condos here priced lower than a used pickup truck, and that is precisely the warning. Much of Lauderhill was built out in the 60s and 70s as affordable retirement housing, and those buildings are now 50 and 60 years old. The mechanism is brutal. Insurers have been walking away from older buildings across Florida, and associations that spent decades keeping monthly fees artificially low never banked the reserves to handle it. Now the bills are arriving all at once. New roofs, new elevators, new plumbing stacks, new insurance premiums that doubled and in some cases tripled, all divided among owners who bought in specifically because they were on fixed incomes. The result is the classic Lauderhill math problem, a $40,000 condo carrying a $60,000 repair obligation. The human cost is real. These assessments land on retirees who have no way to refinance their way out, and lenders have started refusing mortgages in buildings with weak reserves, which traps sellers and buyers alike in the same hallway. Before anyone buys into a building like this, the first questions are not about the unit at all. They are about the reserve study, the insurance renewal, and the minutes of the last 3 board meetings. A low price is not the same thing as a low cost, and nowhere proves that faster. If I were moving to South Florida in 2026, I would not let a cheap listing talk me into an expensive building. Number 7 is Hallandale Beach, the canyon of towers squeezed between Hollywood and Aventura. From the water, it looks like pure prosperity. Wall-to-wall, high rises with ocean views. Inside those towers, the monthly statement tells a different story. Hallandale is one of the most condo-dense towns in the state, and the carrying cost stack here has gotten vertical. Association fees in many buildings now run from $800 to well over $1,500 a month before you pay a dime of mortgage, because the building's master insurance policy, the building's reserves, and the building's repairs all flow straight through that fee. Then the special assessments arrive on top. The mechanism is age plus density. Hundreds of aging towers all hit their major repair cycles in the same decade that insurance repriced the entire coast. The human cost shows up at the closing table, where buyers discover the monthly carrying cost on a paid-off condo can rival the rent on a decent apartment. Run the numbers on a typical unit there. $1,200 a month in fees, several hundred more in taxes and insurance, and a pending assessment, and you are paying close to $2,000 a month on a home with no mortgage on it at all. You can own the unit outright and still owe 4 figures a month forever. If I were moving to South Florida this year, I would not buy a home where the fee is the real mortgage. Number 6 is Lake Worth Beach, and before anyone gets confused, I am talking about the coastal city east of Interstate 95, not the newer suburban pocket farther west that shares part of the name. People mix these two up constantly, and that confusion has cost real buyers real money, because the western communities are full of newer construction that insurers actually like, while the coastal city is the exact opposite story. Lake Worth Beach has genuine charm, an artsy downtown and streets full of 1920s cottages. But those cottages are the mechanism. Pre-1960 construction is the single hardest category in Florida to insure right now. Old roofs, old electrical panels, no modern wind mitigation, and many parcels sitting close to the lagoon in flood zones where federal flood pricing has been climbing year after year. Homeowners in older coastal pockets like this one report premiums that doubled and tripled inside 5 years, and some have been pushed onto Citizens, the state-backed insurer of last resort, which now carries more policies than any private company in Florida. So you pay a coastal premium to buy the house, then a second coastal premium every single year to keep it, and the renewal letter does not care how charming the front porch is. Charm is wonderful, but charm does not pass a 4-point inspection. If I were moving to South Florida in 2026, I would not pay 21st century prices for 1920s risk. And by the way, If you have made it this far, you are paying more attention than most people who scroll past a video like this. So if this is helping, the subscribe button is right there. Number 5 is Tamarac, and Tamarac is what happens when an entire town ages on the same schedule. Huge stretches of it were master planned decades ago as retirement communities, 55 and over neighborhoods wrapped around golf courses, all built within the same short window. That shared birthday is the mechanism. The roofs age together, the clubhouses age together, the pipes under the streets age together. So when the repair bills come due, they come due for everyone at once, and they land through association budgets and special assessments on residents who are promised low fixed costs. Add the insurance repricing that has hammered every older community in Broward, and you get monthly fees that have climbed relentlessly while the homes themselves stay modest. The human cost is the quiet kind. Residents on pensions watching a fee that was $200 become $600 with no ceiling in sight, and resale values pinned down because every buyer can read the same association budget. And that is the part that turns a squeeze into a trap, because the usual escape hatch for a homeowner in trouble is selling, and selling only works when the next buyer cannot see the bill coming. Here the bill is published. A bargain with a rising floor is not a bargain. It is a slow leak with a front door. If I were moving to South Florida this year, I would not buy into a community where every major expense in town is scheduled to arrive in the same decade, no matter how green the golf course looks from the kitchen window. Now, stop for 1 second, because this next stretch is the part that matters most. If you have followed the thread this far, you are already paying closer attention than most people who skim the headlines about Florida real estate. Whether you already own property down here or you are planning the move from out of state, the final 4 towns are where the carrying cost problem gets the most expensive and where the most paper wealth is sitting on the thinnest ice. This is the part you need to hear. Number 4 is North Miami Beach, and this is where Florida's new condo laws are hitting hardest per square mile. After the Surfside tragedy, the state rewrote the rules. Buildings 3 stories and taller now face mandatory milestone structural inspections at 30 years and at 25 years if they sit near the coast, and associations can no longer simply vote to waive funding their reserves. North Miami Beach is packed with exactly the buildings those laws were written for, mid-rise and high-rise condos from the 70s and 80s that deferred maintenance for a generation. The mechanism is straightforward and merciless. The inspection finds the problems, the law forbids ignoring them, and the repair bill gets divided among the owners. Across South Florida, individual special assessments in older buildings have run from $20,000 per unit into 6 figures in the worst cases, and units in assessment-heavy buildings have become nearly impossible to sell because every informed buyer reads the inspection report first. The human cost is owners trapped between a bill they cannot pay and a unit they cannot sell. If I were moving to South Florida in 2026, I would not buy a unit in an old tower until I had read its milestone report like a detective. Quick pause, because this is worth having if you own property anywhere in Florida or you are weighing a move here. Every town worth buying into and every town worth avoiding in this state is now in one place. 40 Florida towns, 20 rated to buy and 20 rated to avoid, in a single guide called the Florida Buy and Avoid List for 2026. You can get it through the link in the description below. But stay right here, because the number 1 town on this list is the one nobody expects. It is the most photographed place in Florida, and the reason I would skip it is the part almost nobody is talking about. Number 3 is Key Biscayne, and Key Biscayne might be the most beautiful mistake a buyer can make in Miami-Dade. It is a genuine island paradise, beaches, parks, quiet streets, some of the priciest homes in the county. Here is the mechanism, and it is brutally simple. 1 road. Every resident, every worker, every delivery truck, every evacuation travels over a single causeway. 1 stalled car turns paradise into a parking lot. 1 approaching storm turns it into a slow-motion exit drill. And the geography that makes it gorgeous makes it expensive to protect. Because barrier island properties carry some of the heaviest windstorm and flood pricing in the entire state, stacked on top of often seven-figure purchase prices. The human cost is paying a fortune for Serenity and then discovering the Serenity has a single point of failure. Contractors charge island premiums. Insurers charge island premiums. The clock charges island premiums. If I were moving to South Florida this year, I would not put my entire net worth on the far side of one bridge. Number 2, Sunny Isles Beach, the famous wall of glass towers on the barrier island north of Miami Beach. From a distance, it looks like the future. Up close, it is a town largely built for people who do not live there. A huge share of these towers were sold to international investors and seasonal owners, and the buildings were priced around that money, not around full-time residents. The mechanism is the FEE stack. Oceanfront towers carry enormous master insurance policies, valet, security pools, and amenities, and every dollar of it flows into monthly fees that in many buildings run $2,000 to $3,000 and beyond, before assessments, before taxes, before your mortgage. When insurance on coastal high-rises repriced, those fees did not creep, they jumped. The human cost lands on the family that buys one unit to actually live in, surrounded by empty units, paying resort overhead 12 months a year. You are not buying a home there, you are buying a share of a luxury hotel's expense report. If I were moving to South Florida in 2026, I would not sign up for a lifetime of someone else's amenities. And that brings us to number 1. I told you it would be the most famous address in the state, and I meant it because everything we have talked about, the insurance, the assessments, the flooding, the fees, all of it reaches maximum strength in one postcard. Number 1 is Miami Beach. The town that is South Florida in everyone's imagination is the town I would skip first. Understand what Miami Beach actually is. It is a low-lying barrier island, much of it built on drained swamp and pumped sand a century ago, holding some of the oldest, dense housing stock in the region. The mechanism is that the water is not waiting for a storm anymore. During the king tides, seawater rises up through the storm drains and floods streets on sunny days, which is why the city has spent hundreds of millions of dollars raising roads and installing massive pump systems just to keep the pavement dry. Insurers can read a pump budget as well as anyone. Windstorm pricing, flood pricing, and aging condo assessments converge here harder than anywhere else in the state, all layered on top of a tourist economy that fills the streets with noise and weekend chaos that residents cannot opt out of. The human cost is the gap between the dream and the deed. People pay the highest premium in Florida to live inside the postcard, then discover the postcard charges rent forever. Let me be honest with you, this is not a prediction of doom, and Miami Beach remains genuinely stunning, but buying is not visiting. Visiting the postcard is a joy. Owning the postcard is a bill that never stops arriving. If I were moving to South Florida in 2026, I would rent the dream for a week and let somebody else own the carrying cost. So here is the thread that ties all 10 together. Not one of these towns is a bad place. They are places where the second number, the one that never appears in the listing photos, has pulled away from the first. The buyers who get hurt in South Florida this year will not be the ones who overpaid on price. They will be the ones who never asked what it costs to keep the home they bought. So tell me where you stand. Drop a comment with where in Florida you are right now, whether you own there or you are planning the move, and what your last insurance renewal did to you. Because those renewal stories tell the real story of this market better than any headline. And tell me which town you think I got wrong. I read those. If you are the kind of person who believes the real story of this market is the one the headlines keep skipping, hit the subscribe button right now. Because next, I am flipping this entire list on its head and showing you exactly where I would put my own money in South Florida in 2026, the towns I would actually move to. And number 1 on that list is a place most buyers drive straight past without ever looking. We will see you in the next one.